Welcome back, everyone, to Context for Chaos, and this is part 3 of Corinna Rosella's 2023 interview. Enjoy.
And a lot of times, like, what a card means, it alters depending on what other cards are around it. But also, I think the card, what it means doesn't mean that that's exactly, I don't know if I can explain this correctly. It doesn't mean that's exactly the message for you. It can be about a deficit, whether, and that can come through if it's reversed. I'm not like I do read reversals sometimes, but I'm not like a big believer in reversals all the time. But I think also like those themes that come up with a card like the Empress, it's like, what part of this do you want to liberate yourself from? Like, do you feel like you're getting back what you're putting in with the people in your life? Do you feel like you're sustaining yourself? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you eating the right foods? Are you getting enough sleep? The Empress is it's a card that represents our accountability towards that.
I love that because I agree. I've seen it come up as like the mother of somebody's kids if it's like a real question about human beings. Like these are real questions about human beings. 99% of the time, it's never even a human. It's about a providing. And that's the other thing. It's like the social constructs. We because we're in a patriarchal society, the father is considered both the provider and the protector, right? And so we kind of push this mother figure off to the side, and they're like, well, they're just a birther and that's it. Whatever else they provide, it doesn't really matter. And that's completely untrue because actually, in terms of like the Empress, or not even mother, just like in terms of the earth in general, it is the provider. Like that's literally what it is. Like I did the Empress, I did all the major arcana and I went through them. I went because I see it from like a fetus kind of thing all the way through like life. And the mother for the Empress is earth, like you said, but it's also oxygen. It's also, the photosynthesis process. It's also, it's your digestive system. It's literally everything that keeps you alive. And then on top of that, keeps you comfortable. Like you said, like you got enough sleep. It doesn't have to be a gender at all. It's how you take care of yourself, or it's what you're being provided with. Like you said, what you're not being provided with. If it's reversed, it could be a deficit. If you believe in reversals, it's like you're getting shown where you're not giving yourself enough. You're burning yourself out. You think you're supposed to be happy, but you're not even giving yourself the things that don't have anything to do with ambition. It's like that's a huge social issue, especially in America. Is your ambition is your ticket to life. It's the reason any of us do anything is because we're supposed to go and conquer and be, and like, whoa, who are you at home? Like, what are you doing at home?
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you're talking about that, there's the Emperor and the Empress can be very triggering to people because of the association with like a parental figure. And a lot of people find the Empress really triggering because of mother wound issues, and kind of like learning to reframe that, which I'm not saying that your experience is exactly like that, but it's like the kind of like the ways that we were or were not nurtured, or the things that and of course, like patriarchy,
Exactly.
like women of a certain age are living in a very different world. Like I think like boomer women, like it's a very different world. And I'm speaking mostly about white women with that. But there's a lot of bitterness in that generation with those types of women. There's a lot of bitterness and resentment for the world that they grew up in that can sometimes be projected on very much the wrong people and places. So I do think like those kinds of things are the things I think of when I think of liberation, because I am thinking about, collective liberation, under capitalism, folks that are more marginalized under capitalism, under colonialism and white supremacy. Like that's one form of liberation. But also, like for me as a person that made I guess I made a name for myself. That sounds so pretentious, but like someone who made a name for myself in social justice work and am a white person. I mean, that is also like it's a big egg to carry that's very fragile. And I think, liberation is difficult when you're living in, a police state. when you're living in extreme economic inequality, which we are living in, extreme incidents of state violence. So to me, liberate like, but those systems, they exist within everyone. That saying, I don't know who said it, like kill the cop in your head. Like you have to kind of do that work. And for me, like it's Tarot School for Liberation is about like utilizing these archetypes that were created so long ago to look at the ways that we hold ourselves back, the way that we internalize. Like I had a really bad eating disorder. I called myself a feminist when I was 9 years old. And I think like that's internalized misogyny, for example, like internalized ableism, like, and I think those are the things that we have control over. Like again, when I was talking about how I'm like, you could go out, like when they're like, what's going to happen, am I going to get a new job, I'm like, you could go out and get hit by a semi, I don't know, like this is your, like you have the autonomy, it's your choice, like. And that's Wheel of Fortune, by the way. Like when you were like, can you talk, I thought you were going to give me an option, I was going to be like, I'm
Tell me about
Wheel of
it.
Fortune. Well, just like this idea that like the wheels keep moving, like the wheels of life keep moving, but where are you going to point them? Like what direction are you going to point them in? And a lot of people with trauma, it sounds like, something you said about like, the trauma becomes part of your identity. You point the wheels at self-destructive patterns because that's what you believe you deserve. The Wheel of Fortune, I always tell people, it's like, this is up to you. Like you can come to a tarot reading about it. And maybe I don't do a good enough job of like promoting myself as a reader by being like, it's your choice, but we do need to support one another. And we need, I have appointments with readers and psychics as well, because like we need support in pointing the wheel in the right direction. Because if all you taught was to drive your chariot into the mud where your wheels get stuck so you can't move, like how are you going to unlearn that? What are you going to do to turn the wheels a different way if you don't even know what direction they're supposed to go in? So to me, liberation is like, I can't change the fact, and it's very disheartening and like troubling to me. I'm a very, very highly sensitive person, I've always been one. um it's very disturbing to me that we have the prison system
Oh,
that we
absolutely.
do.
Yes.
I don't, yeah, like I mean, I
Oh,
don't want
yeah.
to like
No, I'm just
find
like, yeah, we're going to
specifically
bring
a
it up.
set.
I just got to say, yes,
Yeah,
1000 million%. This is a for profit
yeah, like
business. Like, it's not even, it's
yeah,
ridiculous.
it's absolutely like devastating. And I feel like there's so many things happening in the world, like, what's happening in Iran, what's happening in the Ukraine, like there's so many places, Sudan, there's so many, and here, the so-called US. And as someone who used to have this like, I'm going to change the world mindset, where I was like so broken inside, the only thing that we can do is liberate ourselves from like our wounding and from our attachments. And I think like specifically white people, we grow up with so much defense mechanism around it because it's like so shameful. I mean, like that's just the reality of it. It is really hard to be like, I'm acknowledging all the horrible things that people that look like me did and that I benefit from what they did. And I think that, you know, for white folks, and I've also kind of unlearned this thing where when you were saying something about like the person in the room that's like the toxic person is the one who's like, my way is the only way that's right. I was like, I feel sort of like some of the call out culture and like leftist circles that I was very much a part of has that vibe a little bit. And like maybe we're asking for something that's actually a good thing, but people all are on their own timeline. People come into my shop and they're like, where's the white sage? And I'm like, I actually don't carry that because I don't,
It's
I think it's
endangered.
over harvested.
It's an
It's culturally
endangered
appropriate.
plant.
It's, yeah, yeah, and it's over
Learn,
harvested.
people.
So it's like I will say that. Yeah. Or they're like Palo Santo and I'm just like, I use rosemary, and if they're like, no, I'm gonna go buy some, I'm not gonna be like, well, I'm just like, I can't control other people. So I think I like went off in a different direction there. But I think the liberation that we can experience is liberating. I think that is one thing, like white folks, I think, and myself for many years, and like it's not like I'm done. It's like it's really hard to like accept the fact that you're part of that system, that you are like one of the people, that like to some degree, I will always be part of that system. So it's like, how can you liberate yourself from the shame? So it's not so much liberate yourself from like the construct, because we cannot. Nobody can like liberate themselves from patriarchy, from racism, from transphobia, because it's like built around us. But we can liberate ourselves from the shame, and we can liberate ourselves from the internal connection to those things by doing the hard shadow work of like dismantling those systems within us. Like, I don't have to be a Karen, like I can liberate myself from the, whatever it is that is like planted within white women and white people in general. I think that's like, I need to get saved all the time, and like I'm going to get angry and call the cops because I want to be rescued and my feelings to be acknowledged because my dad didn't acknowledge my feelings growing up. And I'm going to carry that for the rest of my life and call cops over it. You can liberate yourself from that. I don't know if any of this
Yeah,
makes
no, I
sense.
love it. I think it's really important for a lot of people to hear it said out loud. I think it's a feeling most of the time. And when you're told you're the most powerful, I mean, subliminally told you're the most powerful race, then you're also thinking I should be the one that should be able to fix it then. And you aren't. You really are just a little. We're all little guppies in an ecosystem, and that's the way that it is. But there's an authority, that's told us differently, so that none of us look at it. And that's the real freaking problem. It's like at the end of the day, there's always going to be these fringe groups. There's always going to be, like that's on every outskirts of everyone, and I think that's that. And also those are the ones that get drummed up all the time in the news as well. How many times do we hear these amazing things that go on in these communities that 80% of people are involved in, and only 20% of the people that are sending, $2 million to that Daniel Sweeney guy or whatever. It's just like it's what they want us to see that keeps us in shame, that also keeps, certain people, like you said, empowered in a way. It's all about, and that's why I was very excited to talk to you, because this is such a hard topic to not only communicate in an equalizing kind of way, because ostracizing people doesn't work either. But also in a way that we can actually bring words to the feeling of it, because once you bring words to it, that's swords, right? Once you bring words to it, you have the truth around what it is that you're considering, or what it is that you want to implement, and it's not just living off of how you feel inside. It's so funny you say that too, because I had such a different experience than I think. Well, I don't know. I know a lot of half black and half white people. My mom's white, my dad's black. But my mom was very clear with me from I don't know, I must have been in diapers by the time she was like, do you know how many people are dying in this country and in this country? Do you know how many, like she's very clear. Like I remember when the census came around, she goes, you put down black. And I was like, oh, you're okay with me not putting white? She was like, I'm a majority. I need you to put down black. And so like I've always been, my dad is not nearly as socially interested, not nearly as, he's much more he wants the life that he wants, and he wants, he's much more self-interested. And my mother's much more altruistic. And I come home, it's either, like the last time, I mean, and I appreciate it, because I definitely feel I'm not seen necessarily, because what she talks about a lot is the latest, because she reads constantly. So I met her with my boyfriend, and I told him, I was like, listen, be prepared. The first thing she's going to say is something to do with a pain in her body, because she's, really, her whole body aches all the time. And I was thinking the second thing she's going to do is bring up some sort of socio-political conversation. And he's fine. I was just like, I'm just calling him out. So we get there, she's coming down the stairs. She's like, I'm trying to get down the stairs. My back hurts so bad. And I was like, what? And then she was like, I am never calling a plantation again. It is a slave internment camp. And I'm like, hello, how are you? Nice to see you. Like, it's like immediate. So she was in sit-ins. She's from Jersey. She'd go and do sit-ins with people and all that kind of stuff. So I also I guess I appreciate the white community that has never. Do you remember when, what was it? It was before 2020. And all of these, oh man, I should remember exactly what happened. It was when I think one of the statues was getting taken down. and it was in one of the southern cities. And I'm always skeptical about, how, I mean, because I'm half white, so I have no, like, my white side is great, my black side's great, but I am, I can see, we all see, so I was like, it'd be very interesting what they do with this. I'm very curious. And all of these young white kids came rushing in and were like, if you arrest that man, that black man, you're arresting me right now. And all of them. And I was like, that's probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen happen, because all of you were like, I know this person isn't going to die if I'm with them. I know that. So you take me with them, and I was just like, I got like chills all over. I was like, okay, so this generation it is still has a lot of fight like the other generations, but it almost feels like even more fearless in a way. It's just like, I have no ties to any, like, I'm not religiously bound, I'm not paternally bound, I'm not, I'm not even really bound to my country because we're all, pissed off at it, so I appreciated that. So I hear exactly what you're saying, but I also want to mention, like, I think that there is sort of a changing tide. There's definitely still a group that we cannot stand, but I think that is how and like you said, like, we can save the world one person at a time if each of us just saves ourselves. If each of us just saves ourselves, then we do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we just keep going. And that's, like you said, where we need to look at ourselves and ask what we can do in that moment. And that's what we give out. And that's all you can do, and then, like my mother would say, and vote. It's like, I don't know if I agree with that anymore, but that's, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what I thought of is the time that the statue was getting removed and there was a black woman that was up
Yes.
on the top, like removing it. There was a white man like spotting her, and people were like, that's what white folks should do. And then there was also, I think this was happening long before 2020, where white folks are encouraged to surround black activists so that black activists are allowed to, show their anger to cops without
Fear of retribution.
without the threat of harm, because and there were actual videos of like a cop pulling up his baton at a young black kid who was angry, and a white person moving in front and the cop putting the baton back. And that's, I think, a wake-up call, because being white, we are raised in a world that's very like, it's deliberate. It's a shadow for us. Like, we are taught that is not real. And I was listening to this podcast recently about how when white folks start standing up to white supremacy, we never really lose our white privilege, but like the state suddenly doesn't want to protect us anymore.
That's true.
So I think that
you're a traitor. You're essentially a traitor,
like
or you're. I mean, if it's not so far as to say a racial traitor, it's just like, well, you don't really see what we're trying to do. You clearly are not. You have an agenda that is disenfranchising and pulling things down, and we're trying to create structure and protection.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So I think like if you're going to do healing work, I guess like with tarot, I believe that your healing work should not be in a vacuum. It should be acknowledging systemic oppression, how you play into it, how it has affected you. I don't always want to be like, how did you cause harm, because especially like if someone's getting out of like an abusive relationship, that's not really like the right time to be like, how did you cause harm? There's certain situations where it's not an appropriate question, but I do think a lot of times like that, in that fear of being all bad, and I do think that is that is a trait of whiteness. Like, things need to be all good or all bad. So I do think that like whiteness is often like, you have to be heroic, you have to be the savior, or you're the villain. And the reality is none of us are either of those things. Like, we're all on a spectrum, and like we all can be either.
We're all just in a big old ocean. Like, we're all just swimming around each other, like it's not nearly as egotistical as we think it is. It's like, I mean, in reality. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, as above, so below, blessed be.